I'm gonna read a script. Jen, are we good? Cool. Okay. Hi, candidates and attendees. Welcome to our first town hall for the 2025 national elections. To briefly go over the protocol, there will be 2 rounds of questions. The first round will feature a general question, and the second round will feature a position-specific question. During the first round, each candidate will have 1 minute and 30 seconds, and during the second round, each candidate will have 1 minute. Vice Chair Yu will signal the remaining time. If a candidate does not wrap up their response by the end of their allotted time, they will be muted. The chat will also be moderated throughout the duration of the town hall and on YouTube, so please remain respectful should you need to communicate via the chat. Vice Chair Tandon and I will alternate asking questions per position in each round in a random question bank, and the order in which the candidates respond has also been randomized ahead of time. We will now begin. So if we can have all the chair candidates turn their cameras on and everyone else turn their cameras off, that would be great. Okay, so the first candidate that will be asked a question is Rashida. Your question is, how will you encourage, recognize, and reward local level programs and initiatives taken by HSDA members? And you have 1 minute and 30 seconds on the clock.
Okay, so a large part of my platform this year, I mean, again, just to reiterate, my platform goes along with a few different letters. So RISE, which has different letters that stand for different things. So a big part of things that I want to do with local chapters align with the letter I, which stands for Imagine, especially after the very hard loss that our party faced in the 2024 presidential election. I think it's really important that we make sure that we allow different levels of HSDA members and all the levels which include local to truly imagine a future for the organization and kind of put all these visions together to make this very strong and like powerful reality for the organization. So something that I really want to do is have a lot of opportunities which we've seen a few this year, especially with kind of things we had in the beginning of the year, like the presidential debate watch parties, but more so see events that allow members at the local level and local chapters to kind of bond and create this network, whether that be through more Slack channels that allow these members to kind of connect about shared issues, or also just have more like bonding events, whether that be like game nights or things such as like policy drafting workshops, which I've mentioned. I also think something really important could be to have, I've in a few other organizations that I've worked with, this has worked very well. For example, like this past summer, I worked on this voter registration drive nationwide that local chapters like hosted in their own at their own levels and in their own like smaller scales. So kind of setting up a competition system where different grants could be awarded for different places in these initiatives based on reach and how effective the initiatives are. So these could go with like levels such as like 500, 400, 300. Having those, I think, really encourages a competitive spirit throughout the organization, like a playful and competitive spirit, and also
Thank you, Rashida. The next candidate that will be asked a question is Zayed. Your question is, how do you envision HSDA by the end of the term if you are elected?
Thank you. I envision HSDA to be a major powerhouse that will be driving the force in the 2026 midterm elections. See, my view of HSDA is that HSDA is an organization built to uplift our membership, build up our local chapters, and bring people opportunities. HSDA, I want to refocus HSDA to be more about teaching our members to organize, teaching our members to be the leaders, not necessarily be volunteers. While, with a lot of our programming, a lot of our events, it's very important work. It's phone banking, it's canvassing. It doesn't make our members organizers. It doesn't make our members the ones who are leading the charge. And I think we need to refocus and make our members who are the ones leading the charge. Because HSDA's main goal is to uplift youth voices in the Democratic Party. And if all HSDA does is be the Democratic Party's volunteer base, then we're not uplifting voices. We're being volunteers. So my vision for HSDA is where we're empowering today's leaders, not necessarily being the volunteers. Thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Zayed. The next candidate that will be asked a question is Parker. Your question is, What do you think is the most important element of youth engagement?
I believe the most important element that youth have when we're being engaged is having conversations with each other. If we don't know what others are saying and what others are working towards, we're not going to work towards the collective progressive movement that we need to have to affect national change. We can affect city change, local change, mainly by ourselves with a smaller team, but to affect national change, whether that's DC, wherever in the country, we need to have a collective voice, and that includes talking with each other, figuring out our messaging, and working with our network of national leaders to see what they're doing and how we can expand on that to re-engage youth and expand on that to get more youth involved because currently our national system is more focused towards older, like 30-year-olds, but we really need to start focusing towards our younger generation. And to do that, we need to come together collectively and have those discussions about what we need to say and how we need to say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Parker. So that wraps up the general questions for chair candidates. I will now pass it off to Neil.
Yes, we are still on the general questions again. Now we're going to move on to the vice chair candidates. So all the chair candidates, please turn off your cameras, and all the vice chair candidates, please turn on your cameras. Perfect. Our first question is starting with Tyler. Your question is, how will you work with the Adult Advisory Board to improve HSDA?
Thank you so much for the question. I believe the role of the Adult Advisory Board is to not only to be a separate set of ears, but also to help give a new perspective. Most of our Adult Advisory Board have served in HSDA or other youth organizations, and I believe it would be a misuse of the Adult Advisory Board for us not to consult for their advice and for their different opinions. I believe looking into how we can incorporate them into our decision making and into the work that we do, just presenting them with the list of items that we will be tackling over the course of the week to let them know what's happening and give them that opportunity to express their opinions, but also to provide that feedback that's necessary to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be going to Reed. Reed, your question is, what do you think is the most effective way to expand HSDA?
Thank you, Neil. I think the most effective way to expand the HSDA is to, one, work with state Democratic parties and county Democratic parties because they will have good windows into local communities, into local cities, schools, towns, but also to work with local organizations that might be politically oriented, such as groups like in Tennessee, we have Public School Strong, groups like that in other states might be well connected with young activists where state parties might not be. And this would be a great way to connect with youth around the country and in all kinds of communities, especially those that aren't traditionally Democratic communities. And this will help us grow the HSDA, it'll help us grow state chapters, and it'll help us grow the Democratic Party as a whole, and hopefully deliver some victories in 2026 for our party. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Our next question will be for Millen. Millen, your question is, how can you assure women/minorities of the organization that their voices will be heard and not silenced?
Okay, so a huge part, like perhaps my number one priority is actually ensuring we represent everybody in the organization, whether they're like a member, general member, a committee member, task force member, or a member of a caucus e-boarder, like basically everything, because every voice needs to be heard. So my first plan, like on day one, is to have meetings with all of those groups and to have a meeting with local chapter leaders so that we can hear from those groups. But also as a caucus leader, I've definitely like seen concerns, and I've seen how many people feel that their voices have been suppressed. So I think a lot of what we need to do is to make sure that we are hearing from everybody, and also that we open an anonymous tip form so that we can make the ethics reporting process more equitable and ensure that everybody's comfortable with that process. And also ensuring that we have monthly town halls so that we can hear from every HSDA member and ensure that all concerns are heard.
Thank you, Millen. Our next question will be going to Santana. Santana, your question is, what would be the first action you take on your first day?
Hi, Neil. Thank you for the question. Um, just to give a little background, my name's Santana. I'm a vice chair candidate, currently serving as regional director and legislative commissioner in California, as well as a member of various different caucuses. I first got it started in HSDA as a general member. But getting back to your question, Neil, my first action would be to launch planning for our HSDA Academy, which would be a monthly training space for organizing, policy, and leadership, as well as scheduling NatCom listen sessions to hear from every rep in before setting national goals. That way, from day one, our work is grounded in community and skill building, two pillars that defined sustainable power within HSDA. I will prioritize working one-on-one with local chapters, giving support to those who are underrepresented in our organization, such as caucuses or our red states from Alabama and Mississippi to Montana and other states across the country, ensuring that our swing states and our red states have the resources they need at the state and national and local level.
Thank you, Santana. Our next question will be for Noam. Noam, your question is, how will you encourage, recognize, and reward local level programs and initiatives taken by HSDA members?
So one of the core parts of my platform is actively recruiting in schools and districts where we don't have a local chapter or where our local chapters are kind of dying or very small. Like my school does not have a local chapter, and as far as I'm aware, I'm one of like two members of the HSDA in my school. And what we should do is, in order to best empower local initiatives, we need to actually have local members. And in order to do that, we should actively recruit in those areas to give okay, I can't speak, those local, you know what I mean, give them opportunities to actually have initiatives so that and have people that they can work with to move those initiatives forward. That's all I can say. I can't speak.
Thank you, Noam. Our final question for the vice chair candidates of this general session will be to Isabel. Isabel, your question is, what do you think is the most important element of youth engagement?
Thank you for your question. I believe that the most important element of youth engagement is A, having tangible actions and goals for youth activists, and B, utilizing collaboration. So what I mean with having tangible goals is to ensure that all students are equitably represented in our organization. And as we all know, we're all students in high school. High school is one of the busiest times of our lives. And we need to have like a set goal for all of our members to ensure that everyone is able to take their own time and as well as to mentally prepare for activism, because being an activist is really hard. It's emotionally stressful and it is draining. So what we need for our members is to ensure that all members are taken care of equally. And what I want to do about that is to create an initiative with the programs director to help create like a mental health initiative and campaign to support our membership. And B, the second part that I wanted to talk about was creating like collaboration within our membership. So what I want to do is to help encourage collaboration between our e-board and our NAT staff to help make sure that everyone's voices are equally heard and represented, not just to do my job by myself as vice chair, but to encourage collaboration all across the board with all 21 national staff members and all 7 e-board members. Thank you for your time. I pass the rest of my time.
Thank you, Isabel. I'll now be passing it off to Hannah to ask the communication director questions.
Thank you, Neil. Again, we are still on the general questions. If all the vice chair candidates can turn the camera off and all the communication director candidates can turn their camera back on, that would be great. And we will start with our first candidate. Okay, so the first candidate that will be receiving a question is Fatu. So your question is, what do you think is the most effective way to expand HSDA?
I think the most effective way to expand high school Dems is to make sure every person's voice is heard and matters. Because when people know that they're being taken care of and that their voice matters, they're more likely to get engaged with the initiatives that we're sharing out, as well as the opportunities that we're giving out. A really great way to make sure this happens is updating our opportunities database, which I talked about within my platform, making sure there's opportunities for people to engage with, no matter the state they're in, no matter whether it's a red or blue state. And that will just help ensure that people are being able to find initiatives that they care about that are sponsored by high school Dems or other Democratic groups. Another part of my platform, which is the See a Difference, SEE, is empowerment. So empowering everyone's voice to make sure that they know that they matter. And how I would like to do this is by starting an initiative called Voices of High School Dems, where we'll be able to post a bi-weekly series on our Instagram pages, and people would be able to apply to be able to post on this series, and they'll be able to talk about any initiatives or ideas that they really care about and that they're truly passionate about. And we'll be giving them our platform so they know that their voice matters and that we can expand our engagement through this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatu. The next candidate that will be receiving a question is Gabriella. So your question is, what specific action items will you plan for the 2026 midterm elections?
Okay, so hello, my name is Gabriella. I know I don't look the most friendly because my video is not working. However, I digress. So first and foremost, I think we actually have to go out and join campaigns. And I think the most important thing we have to do as an organization is become more active and become more embedded in campaigns and just like politics, local politics particularly. And I believe that's the best. Like I think partnering and like getting involved, like actually reaching out to campaigns prior to like volunteering and being like, can we join you? Can we volunteer? Can we like help you guys out? And I think that's perhaps the most important thing we have to do because I, like many people who's watching this and who's in the Zoom meeting, were very disappointed with the election results. And I, for one, do not want to personally go through another 2 years of what's presently happening in DC and across the country. Additionally, I feel like we have to just like I feel like we just have to become like we just have to become more of a unit because there's such a disconnect between both local, state, regional, and the national High School Democrats of America branches. And if we truly want to make change and incite change and enact change really during 2026 midterms, we have to become more united and we have to become more of an organization rather than just like separate groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. And the next candidate will be Ashfa. Your question is, what will you do to ensure that HSDA continues to include a diverse perspective?
Yeah, so as a National Caucus chair, I was the Hindu Caucus chair this year. I know a thing or two about diversity. So, especially serving from the local chapter level to the National Caucus chair, I know that a lot of voices are underrepresented within HSDA. And I think one of the main issues with HSDA right now is how inaccessible it is for caucuses and even states also to be featured on the National HSDA website and the National HSDA Instagram. For example, it takes 10 or more days in advance notice to the communications department currently to make posts from caucuses on the HSDA National Instagram. And I'm going to cut that down to half. So it's only going to take 5 days for a caucus to feature their events, their community, or individuals from their caucus on the national Instagram. Additionally, I want to make sure that regular voices within HSDA are represented. Trans rights, LGBTQ plus rights, and immigrant rights are being attacked right now, and HSD is not doing enough to highlight these issues. For example, only less than 15% of our posts were critical of the Trump administration and their actions on immigration, and that needs to be increased. So what I'm going to do is make sure that all of the posts that I create are not only focused on what HSD is doing, but also on the lies that Republicans are spreading and how we can combat that. That's all.
Thank you, Ashva, and I will now pass it back to Neil.
Thank you, Hannah. I asked that all the communication directors turn off their cameras. All the candidates turn off their cameras, and the programs director candidates please turn on their cameras. We'll be moving into the general questions for that group. Okay, our first question will be to Matthew. Matthew, your question is, the National Board has previously been criticized for being out of touch with grassroots activist work. How will you change that?
Yeah, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. My name is Matthew Brown. I am the programs director for HSDA. I'm running for re-election because of this issue, because we're seeing such a great disconnect between our local chapters and our national board. What we need to do is increase accessibility, increase partnerships between our grassroots activists who make this organization so great, and the leadership that all they do is manage it. As programs director, I have attempted to work over the past year to ensure that at the center of our organization is our local leaders and our grassroots activists. I think part of that is really hearing directly from the source. I want to establish a local leaders council of local chapter members, local chapter leaders, so that we can start to bridge that divide between HSDA National and HSDA Local. Because at the end of the day, our local chapters, our local leaders make up this organization entirely. I really look forward to be able to continue serving to improve, enrich, and grow HSDA, starting from the bottom up and not the top down. Thank you.
Thank you, Matthew. Our next question will be going to Kavya. Kavya, your question is, what do you think is the most important element of youth engagement?
Hi everyone, my name's Kavya, and thank you so much for that question. So, I think the most important part of youth engagement is making sure that we are energetic and that we feel our voices are heard because as youth, we have the power to change the future of the Democratic Party. But I can speak from personal experience when I say that so many of the young people in this country feel disenfranchised by the Democratic Party as we move more towards centrist rather than highlighting progressive voices. Youth engagement really centers on making sure that we feel as though our voices are heard. And so, if the Democratic Party continues to push towards the center and continuously ignores youth voices and progressive voices, we won't make any push or we won't make any leeway in that department, which is why, as programs director, I want to make sure that progressive voices are heard and that our youth feel as though they have a real say in Democratic Party operations. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavya. Our next question will be going to Amanda. Amanda, your question is, how can you assure women and minorities of the organization that their voices will be heard and not silenced?
Okay, hi. So, as someone who's a minority myself, also biologically, a woman, even though I'm not like, I go by they, them. I'd say that we should first establish a cultural competency program that essentially teaches all members how to be aware and cognizant of other people, so that they don't make any microaggressions or offensive comments. I also want to establish a bills tracker that essentially tracks bills in all 50 states and at the national level, and then, has a list of them on the HSDA website so that people know the bills that are directly impacting minorities. I also want to create committees that actively focus on resolving issues that minorities face. For example, maybe like for the climate change, like for something, this is more like task force, like climate change, members should be made more aware of how it directly impacts minorities at a higher level compared to, like white people. Oh, my bad. I accidentally turned off my camera, but yeah.
Thank you, Amanda. Our final question of this general session to program director candidates will be going to Ankita. Ankita, your last question, or your question is, how do you envision HSDA by the end of your term if you are elected?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Ankita, and I'm running to be your programs director for the next year. All right, so thank you for this question, Neil. So my vision for HSDA, especially HSDA programs, is engaging and revitalization. Unfortunately, so many committees that have been created this year have not done much. I've never heard from one campaign thing that has happened this entire year, unfortunately. We have a campaigns committee, the Red and Rurals Commission, and those two specifically, I've literally, unfortunately, never heard from them and been able to interact with those opportunities and been able to get connected with campaigns nearby. For example, there's the Jason Estebe's governor run that's happening in Georgia. Jon Ossoff. I have never been told, hey, Georgia HSD, would you like to come and join? We have a connection to Jon Ossoff's office. Fortunately, that does not happen. And this is what I want to bring to you. Instead of you guys constantly having to search for opportunities to get involved and step up, I will bring those opportunities to you. So what for me, I see HSDA programs as the kind of organization where you can go, get connected, and start actually stepping up like the leaders were meant to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. We're now going to be passing it off to Hannah to ask development director questions.
Thank you, Neil. If all the programs director candidates can turn their cameras off and development director candidates can turn their cameras on, that would be great. Okay, the first candidate that will be asked a question is Sarah. Your question is, how can you assure women and minorities of the organization that their voices will be heard and not be silenced?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Hannah. So, as I've been in the Women's Caucus and have been in it for the last 3 years as well, I've seen that there has been so much progress and that we need to uplift not only the women's voices, but the non-male identifying voices as well. And so, for this to happen, I believe that caucuses should get spotlights as like a separate page on social media because that's how most of us get our news from HSDA outside of Slack when Slack isn't down, unfortunately. And so I think having like a separate page just for the caucuses and making sure that we have this limelight on them, as well as making sure that there are opportunities for women to get involved and for non-male identifying people to have political opportunities outside of just HSDA. And so I plan on working with the programs director as well as the numerous caucuses to make sure that these diverse voices are lifted up. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. The next candidate is Ananya. Your question is, how will you encourage, recognize, and reward local level programs and initiatives taken by HSDA members?
Hi, thank you so much for that question. Hi, everyone. My name is Ananya Batla, and I am currently serving on HSDA's Northeast Regional staff, and I'm currently their Director of Organizing and Strategy. So this is actually a great question. So essentially what I want to do to build up the local chapters is to work on giving them one-on-one meetings through my Build Back Better plan. And I think this is really important because as of now, local chapters are not being heard on a wide level. And I think a key issue and the reason that this is actually happening is because of our state chapters not being as engaged. So first off, to address that issue, I would like to have one organization and have one election day to ensure that the state chapters can be elected properly so that they can be connected to their local chapters. And by connecting these state chapters to their local chapters, we can make it a lot easier to create a chapter starter kit and having chapter launch meetings each month on Zoom to interact one-on-one with the e-board to understand how people can start local chapters, how they can expand their social media, how they can expand fundraising. Because as a local chapter leader myself, I understand how much of a struggle this can be because at first I was unsure as to how this process exactly worked. And I wish that there was someone there to guide me through this process. So I think using Slack for this and using the networks that we already have established, we can expand further by first strengthening our state chapters and then working towards our local chapters to revitalize them from between. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ananya. The next candidate is Celine. Your question is, how will you work with the Adult Advisory Board to improve HSDA?
Hi, everyone. My name is Celine. I'm running to be your development director. And on the question of how I would work with the AAB in order to ensure that HSDA is as strong as ever, is really focusing on making sure that our voices are represented to the AAB. We, as a HSDA organization, have so many great opinions and so many diversity in our voices that really need to be recognized on a national level. So giving students the opportunity to interact with AAB and to get their voices heard would be a #1 priority. In addition to this, there are a lot of great opinions that adults who have had experience in the political field or who have had more experience in their career lives could offer to students as well. So this would be a big aspect of how I would want to interact with AAB, to ask them for advice on how we can continue to make this organization stronger and more unified, especially going into the 2026 midterms. We have to make sure our organization is as unified as ever to make sure that we have a huge Democratic turnout for the 2026 midterms.
Thank you, Celine. The next candidate is Eli. Your question is, what will be the first action you take on your first day?
Well, thank you, Hannah. To understand my first action, you have to understand my vision, my goals, and what I hope to achieve as development director. I've served as Montana HSDA state chair for 1 year since May of 2024. And in just 1 year, we've built up one of the strongest and most resilient state chapters in a tiny red state. We've accomplished what I call more: membership, opportunities, relationships, and engagement. We have chapters across our state, from Blue Missoula to tiny towns that vote 65 or 75% Republican, and towns of 10,000 or less than 10,000, even towns of less than 1,000. Just this past week, we've welcomed 2 new chapters. So my predominant goal will be strong, engaged, active members and chapters in all 50 states. And I have the experience of going against the odds in a small Republican rural state to make that happen. So my first action to achieve that will be to reach out to the state chairs, the local chairs, and make sure that I understand the state of affairs in all the states, where their chapters are located, what their membership is like, what their activity is like. So then we can better develop and understand where the needs are, is we have to focus on our priorities. We have gubernatorial races in Virginia and New Jersey coming up, and we'll have critical midterm elections coming up soon. And we need to focus on where our impact in development can have the greatest impact in those races. So again, my first priority will be sitting down and talking to those state and county chairs so I can assess their needs and we can develop all 50 states.
Thank you, Eli. I will now be passing it off to Neil.
Thank you, Hannah. We're now going to be moving into our candidate-specific question sets. So basically, you're going to have 1 minute and 30 seconds. We decided to extend the time to another 30 seconds, so you guys have more time to speak on your platforms, starting with the chair candidates. So our first chair candidate, well, first, actually, if you guys could turn on your cameras, and the development director candidates turn off your cameras. Thank you. Okay, our first chair candidate to get a question will be Rashida. Rashida, your question is, given the growth of our organization over the past few years, managing how much time can be dedicated to different projects can be sometimes difficult for the national chair. What actions would you prioritize, and how would you effectively manage your time?
So some of the main actions that I would prioritize, something that I really want to do on day one, is ensure that all of the executive board members are able to kind of meet and decide what times they want to offer every month for office hours that allow different people to ask questions pertaining to their specific departments and areas of work. I also really want to focus on grassroots mobilization and lobbying efforts this year, because kind of in the past few years, while we have placed an emphasis on a lot of opportunities to meet with, for example, DNC officers or legislators, we haven't really focused on these 2 crucial skills. I also really want to make sure that HSDA members have more of a chance to kind of just like bond and not really just have this be facilitated through events where they just may be on like the same Zoom link or just get to talk through a Slack channel. So I really want to have more of these kinds of fun events and bonding events that occur monthly. I really do think that I will be able to prioritize all of these efforts next year and kind of create a schedule that will allow me to address all of the areas that I want to with different executive board members. This year, as communications director, I was able to spearhead a lot of initiatives with the Progressive Teen, Progressively Yours, etc., and all of my committees that I was spearheading and leading. And I really think a lot of that just goes hand in hand with ensuring that there is straightforward communication with all of the people that I'm working with, any other leadership that I am managing and trying to like execute initiatives with. And I think that all just comes with, creating schedules and checklists and having all of this be shared and easily accessible with all of our leaders.
Thank Thank you, Rashida. Our next question will be to Zayed. Zayed, your question is, being on the board involves having to make difficult, quick, and sometimes unpopular decisions. Whose opinions would you prioritize when making a major decision?
You for the question. Now, obviously, when as HSTA chair, you're representing the entirety of HSTA membership, whether that's caucus leaders, state leaders, local leadership, and your fellow members on e-board. For me, HSTA's backbone is our membership. It is our local chapters. And so as chair, I will make a large I'll be spending most of my time prioritizing their voices, because if we want this organization to continue to thrive and continue to build itself up, we need to focus on the people that have brought us here. Now, look, when decisions happen, they happen quick. There's many heated emotions, and we aren't always necessarily able to get the full picture. What we have to do is make sure as many voices are heard as much as possible. I will be spending time making sure I talk to local chapter members and state leaders, caucus chairs. It's something I've been doing as diversity director. As diversity director, my main job has been supporting others, working with others, talking with others, and that's something I'd like to bring as chair. This collaborative leadership style where we're making sure every voice is heard. Yes, there are times where we can't get to everyone, but at least being mindful of the positions they hold, the thoughts they have, the goals and plans that they want to initiate. Holding those near and dear to what I do as chair is my plan, and I will make sure that every member's voice is heard to the best of my ability. And I thank you for the your time.
Thank you, Zayed. Our next question will be to Parker. Parker, your question is, in what ways do you think HSDA's relationship with the DNC should be utilized and or transformed?
Ready. Thank you, Neil, for that question. And that goes directly to my second core pillar in my platform, network utilization. HSDA has a vast network from DNC leadership, state party leadership, local party leadership, across the country that we're not using to its full potential. I, as a state leader for High School Dems, worked with my state party to get the state party to commit money to us every year for our convention. We got it last year. We got $1,000. This year we got another $1,000. Well, yes, that may seem like a small amount, but in Kentucky, that's a lot. We're actually here in Kentucky, we're facing a very big money shortfall, and that's one reason that I've worked so closely with the state party to get High School Dems here in the state money, and also try and push them to sponsor our national summit. Working with the DNC and having the advice from my Kentucky Democratic Party Chair Coleman, who was on White EA and got the DNC to give them a budget position. I understand how that process works, and I'm committed to fighting with the DNC and talking with Chair Martin about getting High School Dems a yearly budget from them. That is a commitment from them every year for us, for Summit, for any events we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Parker. I'll now be passing it off to Hannah to ask the vice chair candidate specific questions.
Thank you, Neil. If the chair candidates can turn their cameras off and the vice chair candidates can return and turn their cameras on, that would be great. The first candidate is Tyler. Your question is, how will you delegate work and collaborate with your co-vice chair?
Thank you so much for the question. So first off, to give a little context to my background, I have had the pleasure of serving as a national committee coordinator for the last 2 years. This is one role that is crucial under the VC's department, and I've been honestly honored to have worked with both sets of VCs last year and this current year. When it comes to working with my counterpart, the other VC, it comes down to looking at what our strong suits are. I believe it's dependent on who and what we are as people and what we've worked on in previous times. I know that one of my strong suits is, of course, national committee, but I also have strong suits in other areas as well. I think in terms of delegating, it's about making sure that we are both carrying the workload to as efficiently and effectively lead this organization along with the other members of the e-board, but also to make sure that all tasks are handled with the utmost of care and responsibility. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tyler. The next candidate is Reed. Your question is, if you get to serve on the DNC, what strategy will you use to ensure HSDA gets the support it deserves?
Thank you, Hannah. Number one is making sure that we have something that we're carrying with us, whether that be business cards, pins, name tags that identify us as the representatives of the HSDA, so that when we are moving around our community, we're connecting, or not our community, around the DNC, we're connecting with leaders and they know who we are and they're more willing to help us, hopefully. The other thing is making sure that we're not just sitting silent in meetings. And I know that that's probably not what happens at national, but I know this happens at state levels. So we need to make sure that our representatives, and I will ensure our representatives are speaking up in meetings, making our voices heard, asking for what we need, putting our positions of the high schoolers that we represent into consideration, and ensuring that the DNC and the delegates of the DNC are informed about how they can support us, and making sure that we are asking them to help us support the HSDA. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Reed. The next candidate is Millen. Your question is, historically, HSDA state chapters have struggled to form strong relationships with their state parties. What will you do to foster stronger relationships and support?
Okay, so as Maryland State Chair for HSGA, this is something that's been a top priority for me. When I came into office, we basically had not had any relationship with our state party for 4 years. So immediately, I basically, like, not everybody in the state party was willing to work with us. Not every state party staffer, not every member of state party leadership, but we found people who thought that we had value, and which ended up being like the deputy executive director of our state party. And we found ways to give value to our party, and we also made sure that our voices were heard. But at the same time, we didn't, like, when we objected to something that the state party was doing, we made sure our voices were heard, because I think what's often a mistake within many state chapters in HSDA, once they do get representation, is that they fail to make their voice heard, and they feel like they're, below the state party. But something that I've talked to a lot of people in YDA about is that is that we basically have to fight for our representation and fight for getting funding, and also provide value to the state party, because HSDA is basically the best rural outreach arm for the Democratic Party, right? Because the youth rural outreach arm, because, like, college towns are not everywhere. High schools are everywhere. So we can reach rural areas, especially in our first congressional district race, which can be like.
Thank you, Millen. The next candidate is Santana. Your question is, what reforms do you think are necessary for the National Committee? I think you're muted.
Andrew. Sorry, I just realized I was muted. So the National Committee is one of our most unutilized leadership bodies, and we need to change that. So as vice chair, I'd begin by reforming how we engage and empower state and caucus leaders. That starts with establishing clear communication strategies, including monthly NatCom briefings and working groups that actively shape national initiatives. I'd also reorganize and restructure equity by ensuring caucus reps have a real seat at the table and a real voice in everything we do, especially those representing marginalized identities within HSDA. The current relationship between NatCom, national staff, and the executive board is too top down, and we need to make it from the bottom to up. So we need to decentralize decision making and uplift the grassroots leaders doing the work every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Santana. The next candidate is Noam. Your question is, this past year, our VCs have worked on getting representation for local and state leaders for their local and state Democratic Party. How would you continue and improve this initiative?
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part of the question. Can you repeat the first part of the question?
It's more of background, but yes, I can read it again. This past year, our VCs have worked on getting representation for local and state leaders for the local and state Democratic Party.
Okay. And then hold on. I don't have good memory. What was the sorry?
The question was, how would you continue and improve this initiative?
Um, general, what we need to do is just we need to ensure that the EC just has more connections with the rest of it, not only with the rest of the HSDA, not only with our local branches, but like with our general membership, even if they're not in a local chapter. Like I'm not a member of a local chapter because my school doesn't have a local chapter, but I'm still in the general membership and I'm not in any high ranking position. So what we need to do is we need to gauge the general opinions of the entire membership of the HSDA. So that could potentially be through like I don't know if there's like an option to do this in Slack or if we would just send this to all of our members, but like simply like asking a certain, if we don't know what to do on a certain issue, we would just ask our general membership to, ensure that we are in touch with the entirety of our membership. Okay, sorry, I have a 12-year-old sister. So what, hold on, I forgot, I lost my train of thought. Sorry, that's all I have to say then.
Thank you, Noam. The next candidate is Isabel. Your question is, as vice chair, you'll be responsible for leading the national committee. How will you balance the responsibilities of both being a strong leader while also being approachable?
Thank you so much, Hannah. So one of the biggest things that I proposed on my platform was to help support the office hours. And I know that that's a very like broad answer because office hours can mean a lot of different things. But one of the things that I wanted to implement in my office hours initiative is to help support national committee members, including both states and caucuses and local leaders into one to help individually support each member. So what I want to do for national committee specifically, which I will talk about, is for context and background. I've been on NACOM for the past 3 years. I've served as a state chair and I'm the West Regional Director, so I know how to utilize my resources. So one of the things that I want to do for national committee office hours is to help the leaders and national committee representatives to write resolutions and agenda proposals. Anybody that has been on NACOM before does know that I've written and co-proposed multiple resolutions, so I know how to write and co-write them. So I will help each leader individually write their own response and what they want to do on our agenda. Like many of the candidates have already said, National Committee is a very strong resource in supporting organizations. So utilizing National Committee to its full potential is extremely important and is very, very essential to make sure that every leader is equally represented from all states and caucuses. I yield the rest of my time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Isabel. I will now pass it off to Neil.
Thank you, Hannah. I asked that all vice chair candidates turn off their cameras and all communication director candidates turn on their cameras. We're moving to that portion of candidate specific questions. Our first question is going to Fatu. Your question will be, other than the traditionally used methods of social media and email, what channels of communication would you employ to ensure that all members of HSDA are aware of any and all events, initiatives, etc.?
Hi, thank you so much for that question. I think a really important part to get information out, not just to people who have social media, but also people who don't, is to communicate with state and local chapters to get physical printings of the information out in major cities where they're at. So I know Washington State High School Dems, we like to post physical printings of any upcoming events, any initiatives we have in Olympia, in Seattle, in Kirkland and Bellevue, and any other major cities around our area. Another way I would like to support people is through utilizing our website. So really revamping our website so that it's accessible to everybody, no matter, where you are. Another thing I talked about in my platform was utilizing our opportunities page. So posting all of our opportunities to this page, no matter if it's local, state, or national, so that people have a place that they can check regularly so that they're being supported and that they can make a difference within their communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatu. Our next question will be going to Gabriella. Gabriella, your question is, what is the appropriate response from HSDA when major national news breaks? For example, hate crime incidents, election results, etc.
Okay, so yet again, my apologies that my camera has decided to not cooperate with me. But I first and foremost believe that when when like things that essentially are extremely traumatic, that like essentially that incite people to have an emotional harm and emotional just emotions in general, we have to like look back, we have to sit back and just think. And we can't obviously we need to post a statement, but prior to that we have to actually communicate with people that are directly affected by that, that are within our ranks, within our members, that are members of High School Democrats of America, and we have to ask them, are they okay? What do you think? What should we do? And I think that makes what we say and what we do like extremely, 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 I can't like aptly describe how important that is, how extremely better, because just making a rash statement and just like posting something that we haven't actually gone to the proper channels, because proper channels makes us look bad. And I generally believe that right now we're in like an extremely we're in an extremely I guess extremely just times in which change happens, times in which people just don't know what's happening, and we have to filter out what's actually happening, what's fake, and what's real. And I believe we have to go through the proper channels. We do a statement, but we have to do it after we think and after we actually do something. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriella. Our next question will be for Ashfa. Ashfa, your question is, we currently have around 6,500 followers on Instagram, 4,000 on Twitter, and 1,000 on TikTok. How can we utilize other possible platforms or reinvent our current approaches to social media?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that we can do. For some background information, I was a comms director this year for Illinois High School Democrats, and I had the pleasure of leading the most active state Instagram this year. And I also quadrupled engagement from the previous term. And I know exactly how to fix these issues because I've also served on the National Social Media Committee. So I'm the only candidate who has experience already with how HSDA operates its national Instagram, its Twitter, and its Blue Sky or other platforms. So what I want to do is make sure that we focus on video form content. And this is content that can be posted on all of our platforms, including TikTok and Instagram. And video content is something that can improve our followers across all different platforms. And I think the main thing that we have to focus on is having real-time reporting. When the Trump administration attacks our rights, or when other officials or right-wingers call upon extreme statements on immigrants and minority groups, we need to report on exactly what they're doing. And that's something that drives a lot of engagement. And I've seen that on my term on HSDA's National Social Media Committee, where I've created numerous posts on current events.
Thank you, Ashfa. We now passing off to Hannah to ask program-specific questions.
Thank you, Neil. If the communication director candidates can turn their cameras off at this point, and the programs director candidates can turn their cameras on. Okay, so the first candidate is Matthew. Your question is, the programs director is heavily involved in annual summit operations. How do you plan to use your networking and expertise to ensure quality summit programming and planning?
Yeah, it has been a true honor to be able to work with so many incredible leaders and advisors to plan Summit 2025. One of the key parts of my platform last year was establishing an expanded Summit Committee. We started the Summit Events and Trainings Committee to get a true perspective from our membership of what they wanted to see at Summit. We were able to fundraise. I fundraised, our department fundraised, our e-board fundraised. We lowered the cost of Summit by almost $100, and we expanded scholarship opportunities. Summit is an incredible place for our leaders to come together and to advocate, to learn, to strategize, to organize, and to meet. Over the next term, if reelected, I hope to continue to be able to lower the cost of Summit to make sure that everybody is able to go to learn these experiences, as well as emphasizing accessibility. This year, we led our first ever HSDA national event in a different language. We had our Spanish Leaders Summit. I believe that we need to continue to make this the norm in HSDA. We need to emphasize language accessibility and accessibility in general. Summit should be a place that everyone can feel safe, can feel involved, and can get a true perspective of what it means to be a grassroots leader, what it means to be a member of HSDA, and be able to experience the trainings, the speakers, and everything that comes along with going to an in-person summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. The next candidate is Kavya. Your question is, what plans do you have to ensure that more events are planned for caucuses and help advise them in raising awareness for their caucuses?
That's a great question. Just to reiterate, my name's Kavya. I'm currently serving as the Arizona State Chair, and I'm running for your programs director. In order to make sure that our caucus system feels heard, I want to make sure that we host not just town halls and not just politically oriented sessions, but I want to make sure we host community oriented sessions. For example, for our Hindi caucus, we could do like a Bollywood movie night or something of that sort in order to make sure that we feel that our culture is being spread and we feel that there's a real community here rather than just a collection of like-minded individuals. HSDA is an incredible organization because of our national outreach, but we also can feel a little bit disconnected because of that. But I want to make sure and reiterate the importance of community in political organizing and just in any space like this, which is why I want to focus on making sure that our caucus system feels supported and make sure that we can host events, not just focused on politics, but also focused on building a community of like-minded and similarly passionate change-making individuals. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavya. The next candidate is Amanda. Your question is, oftentimes there's low turnout for national events and trainings. How will you improve this?
Okay, so throughout my experience as programs director for the Latino caucus, and communications director for the First Generation caucus, and also my experience as actually like being the co-chair of an organization, what I realized is that we need good advertising. Like, if you want to gain traction for your events, you should build up suspense. Maybe start advertising at least bare minimum 1 week early so that way people can like add it to their schedules and actually plan out and coordinate to show up at it. And so with this advertising, I want to work with the communications director to actually create entertaining videos and posts that make people want to join. And alongside people actually attending these events, I want to have a sort of tracker that tracks who's the most active, and that way we can incentivize them when they apply to be part of committees or task forces. Because what I want to do is like implement chair and vice chair positions to both committees and task forces to make sure that members can actually gain leadership experience and there's constantly someone who's actually able to host meetings and get stuff done. And in addition to that,
Thank you, Amanda. The next candidate is Ankita. Your question is, how would you ensure that all members of HSDA have the opportunity to be active in our organization throughout the year and in the loop about all events, not just state and national leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, hi, I'm running to be your 25-26 programs director. So let's talk about what it takes to actually get people to know about these events. So social media, newsletters, and word of mouth. So obviously, state and local events often get more traction because the state chapters advertise those better. As ANHPI Caucus National Chair, I've hosted over 40 plus virtual events. So I know what it takes to get people to come. And what it takes is actual importance. Like, you have to make them feel like it's important for them to be there and that they should care. Additionally, accessibility is a huge thing. We've heard this being talked about before, but what are we actually doing in terms of actually making this stuff accessible? Are our websites blind friendly? Like, are our events and our posts actually accessible for the blind? Like, do we have alternative text that is available? And additionally, do we actually make sure that every single person can actually see these things? Like, do we make sure that our newsletter is reaching the people that it should? Additionally, with programs, it takes a huge team of people. So my main thing is to also make sure that the people that I'm working with are actually committed to the mission of HSDA. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankita. I will now be passing it off to Neil.
Thank you, Hannah. We are reaching our final batch of questions of candidate-specific questions. I ask that all program director candidates turn off their cameras and all development director candidates turn on their cameras. Okay, our first question will be going to Sarah. Sarah, your question is, the development director often has to be the mediator in conflicts during election season. How are you prepared to do so?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Neil. So during my freshman year, I was the development director of Michigan, where we had this exact conflict happen during our election season. The way we went about it is that we also had our own adult advisory board, and through those outside views, we were able to settle as well as ask for external opinions, like going to the nationals for help, to make sure that these conflicts were settled without anybody getting hurt in the process. Although there was a bit of a backlash from this person himself, it ended up becoming fine because we were able to give him a different opportunity to work within the HSDA, not just in the position he originally applied for. I think it's all about compromise, not just sticking to one final decision, but making sure that everyone gets a piece of what they want to be heard and to be accomplished by making more opportunities for people to join as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next question will be to Ananya. Ananya, your question is, fundraising for our annual summit can be a large and difficult task. What ideas or strategies do you have for fundraising?
That's a great question, actually. And I do have a few ideas for fundraising. So I think fundraising is important at the local level, at the state level, but especially at the national level, especially when we're hosting Summit. So a few ideas that I had was first to create a partnership program. And essentially what I wanted to do was collaborate with a bunch of progressive organizations that are willing to promote HSDA and align with their values in order to create these partnerships that can help us fund parts of Summit. Furthermore, I also wanted to create grant applications that include youth civic engagement. Maybe they're like leadership programs, democracy, for example, Civics Unplugged. And we would give them our programs data as well as our reports from previous years in order to fill out these grant applications, which I know that HSDA has had a focus on in the past, which I think could also help to continue in the future. And another idea that I did have that we could also implement was creating like a virtual fundraiser. So whether that would include like fundraising appeals or having guest speakers attend these virtual fundraiser events, we could also appeal to our general members to donate in these events as well and have watch parties, which I know that HSDA already promotes on its Slack. So I think by using these small measures that we've already started to implement, we can expand them to fund Summit, which is a big expenditure, because I know that HSDA does have a focus on donations, but we can move past that as well by having these fundraisers and online events and having a proper partnership program, and by managing our finances such that they are able to be tracked and understood at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. Our next question will be to Celine. Celine, your question is, how can we ensure that the state board, newly elected caucus leaders, and national staff get the support and training required to efficiently run their respective positions?
Absolutely. This is definitely something really, really important, making sure that our local base is as strong as possible. And if elected, your development director, something I really want to focus on to make sure that they are incorporated into the national organization as best as possible is to first make sure everyone on that team is on Slack. When I recently attended my state summit, I discovered that many individuals did not even know that a national Slack existed. So that's the first thing I would focus on, because a lot of communication happens through Slack. The second aspect of this is I want to create a document that details all of the steps in order to make sure that your team can onboard successfully. So this would be looking like your previous state's officers creating a document on all of their advice and all the processes, as well as all of their contacts for the new board to use in order for them to successfully be onboarded. And this would make sure that there's a continuation between terms. And this would also make sure that the individuals would feel more supported. The third thing is really open communication. I want to be an open book. I want to support all the young Dem leaders across our nation. So if they have any questions, I want to be open and available to them, for them to contact me, call me, and I want to answer any of their questions if they have any.
Thank you, Celine. Our final question for this town hall session will be going to Eli. Eli, your question is, fundraising is key in the operations of development director. What methods would you use to employ, or what methods would you employ to ensure HSDA is able to stay afloat and pay for all the needs of our organization?
Well, thank you, Neil. And that's a great question. And I've had much experience with fundraising for high school Dems in Montana. We are currently in the process of helping fundraise for the National Summit, and we have now more than $5,000 pledged for the National Summit from donations in Montana. So two of the major strategies that I have employed to fundraise in Montana that I will take nationally are visibility and personal relationships. Visibility, we need high school Dems to be a presence in our state and local chapters need to have a strong presence. So I've been going across Montana. I've spoken at county and state party dinners. I'll be on our Montana Democrats State Party podcast in a few weeks as a guest speaker. I went across the state. I drove 8 hours. I spent a whole weekend in a tiny corner of the eastern part of the state to speak at a county dinner. But that establishes a personal connection and a visibility, and it means that those county leaders, those state leaders are more likely to support us. And personal connections are key. You know, one example I use, the biggest donation that has come for Summit fundraising from Montana was from the Ravalli County Democrats. It's a county about an hour south of Missoula, and it voted nearly 70% for Trump. And they gave us $1,000. And the reason this small Republican county was able to give us that much was because I built up a personal connection with their chair and attended their events, so they knew me and they knew my presence and felt willing to support me. So.
Thank you, Eli. I'll now pass off to Hannah for closing statements.
Thank you, Neil. That concludes Town Hall number 1. We look forward to seeing you all at the second Town Hall next week on Friday, June 27th at 5 p.m. PT, 8 p.m. ET. And we will be providing information regarding that Town Hall in a similar manner as this Town Hall. Again, we highly recommend all candidates to attend both Town Halls. So yeah, that concludes the Town Hall. Thank you for coming. Have a good night.
Thank you, guys.
Good night, y'all.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Thank you. Have a
Night.
great night.